Hey F1 fans, it's time for another look at who moved up and who moved down. Now before we get into it, I had one person ask me, how did you get into F1? So actually I wasn't into F1, and then I started dating my current boyfriend, and I made fun of him because he would get up at 2:30 sometimes and watch quali, and I'm like, it's just qualification, it's not even the race. Anyways, but over time, he started to just give me the narrative, the way that the next Netflix show has given to most people, right? Like who the people are, who the teams are, who's been winning all the time. It was Mercedes at the time. Who are the rivals that he's rooting for? Which are his favorite drivers and what's their history, like Vettel. And I actually, it took a lot of effort. I actually took notes and I had all the teams so I could recognize the car that I see and I could figure out who it was and what team it was. Because it takes a while to recognize quickly, so that you really know what's going on, who's racing who in the, race that you're watching. Anyway, so slowly but surely, I think by the time Max and Hamilton were going at it in 2021 for the championship, I was pretty in the know. I knew all the drama. I knew all the stuff, and I was a Max fan because of course you want the incumbent champion to get knocked out and have a new champion come in, and so then I was firmly in. I was jumping up and down and screaming right along with everybody else at the end of that race. I've never looked back. Although I must say, I still don't wake up at 2:30 to watch quali. We stream it later when we wake up. We just try not to look at any spoilers or results on our devices. Anywho, so here we are, Belgium. The glue gun behind me. I call it the glue gun because it so looks like a glue gun race, but it's a lovely forest area and it goes up hills and down hills. It's a real good challenge for the drivers. And so, without any further ado, let's see what happened over the last two races. Okay, let's look at the teams. Our one and only swap, I'll give that away right away, is McLaren has passed Ferrari in the championship, and it's a good margin. It's 21 points. Red Bull still stays ahead, but boy, has that gap shrunk. It was to the tune of 70 points before, and now it's to the tune of 42. So huge gap shrink there for Red Bull. Mercedes, they got a 1-2 finish in Belgium, basically. George got disqualified, but there you have it. And Hamilton on the podium the other race, so they got lots of points. They are closing that gap. It's down to 79, although it's still pretty harsh and insurmountable. Is anyone else close? I would say this is close, except Haas is in bad form right now, and RB is in improving form, so I don't know if this will close. And this might stay the same. Both of those teams really struggling. Kick Sauber struggling. But as we know, Haas is now going to be getting Ocon starting next year. And Williams will be getting Saints. And Williams, of course, is on a big trajectory to try to gain back their glory. So there we have it for the teams. I'm pretty sure McLaren will stay ahead of Ferrari, and it remains to be seen whether Red Bull will stay ahead of Mercedes. They've just tossed in for Perez, and I get it. He's probably their lower risk scenario. I'll talk a bit more about that when we get to Perez, to try and keep that championship gap. All right, and now for the drivers. Let's see who changed first. Okay, we have a swap between Saints and Piastri. Saints got a P6 and a P6 in the two races. That's incredibly consistent. But Oscar got a P1 and a P2. So, better than consistent, winning. Piastri moves up, but the gap remains small. But I think this is a case of Piastri moving ahead and widening this gap. I'm not actually worried about this 5 points closing down. Okay, we also have a three-way swap, Sergio, Russell, and Hamilton. Sergio Perez, he got P7 and P7. But he's always wrecking his race somehow, either him or something else, tires or strategy. For the Hungary race, he went into the wall in quali, so he had to start in P15, fight his way up to P7. In Belgium, he showed what he could do. He qualified really well in P2, but still finished P7. But yeah, so I was saying the team decided to hold on to him. I get it, right? He is the devil that you know, because they could swap in any of the other drivers, Ricciardo, Yuki, or Liam Lawson, and it's a wild card. You just don't know, right? Ricciardo, he could be dangerous, right? He's hungry. He wants to win again. He threw that away when he left Red Bull a long time ago. If he had stayed, man, his career would be completely different. So Ricciardo's going to want to win. He's not going to just be driver number 2. So there's a risk there, right? With Liam Lawson, he's new. So how is he going to handle just being at the front, racing at the front? Is he going to live up to it, or does he need a season or two to really come up to speed? Yuki's really showing himself, but Yuki's another very passionate driver, very emotional driver. When it gets to, places where you might be racing Max or, having to give him a position or something, I think there might be too much volatility there, too much emotion. So I can sort of see, Perez they don't have to worry about those things. They've seen how he performs in the number 2 seat at the Red Bull, period. So it's just a matter of can we get him to find his form again? And come on, Sergio, I still want Red Bull to keep the Constructor Championship. So you got to do it, man. All right. We've also got, of course, George Russell. He had quite a journey. He got a P8 and then disqualified from winning. He had a bad quali in Hungary and then ran out of fuel when looking to set a better quali lap later. So his quali remained P17. So that didn't help. He fought his way back to P8. It was a good fight. Great drive. He's driving really great. There's no doubt there. Very consistent. Belgium was interesting. So he was not doing as great as Hamilton. He was further back, not really a contender for the win. So they decided to risk a one-stop strategy. And he won the race. Took it from Hamilton, who ran the perfect 2-stop strategy and did everything right as well. He was a bit bent out of shape afterwards. But then George got disqualified because the car was underweight. So that's on the team. That's not on George. But still, he and Perez both fall back a little as our next driver, Hamilton, moves up because Mr. Lewis got a P3 and a P1. So that's hugely respectable. He inherited his P1, but he was right there for it. And his P3, in spite of contact with Verstappen in a very spicy battle, he managed to clinch P3. So really good drives from Lewis. He's much happier now. He's probably regretting a little bit, maybe leaving Mercedes for Ferrari. But, Ferrari's still up there. And like Mercedes made their breakthrough, I think Ferrari's going to make their breakthrough at some point. So he's going to be there for it if it happens. If not, he's going to be there to fight for the occasional win. He was probably fighting for the championship, but alas, maybe not. All right. And then finally, Ocon and Albon switch places. Albon got a P14 and P12, nothing to write home about. And Ocon actually got some points, getting a P18 and a P9. So that moves him up a little. And finally, all the other drivers didn't move, but we do have some juicy stories there. Max, as we mentioned, made contact with Hamilton during a last race battle for third, late race battle for third in Hungary, leading to an investigation. In the end, it was a racing incident. Both drivers were kind of like, yeah. So, racing incident, Max got P5 and P4. So he's definitely not just, pulling away into the sunset at the front of the pack. He's having to really work. For the Belgium race, he had to take a penalty because he needed new engine parts for his car, and so he fought back through the pack from P11. So he actually got a beautiful P1 quali, and he beat everyone else in quali by 0.6 seconds. But he had to take a 10 grid penalty. Still, finishing P5 was pretty good. Okay. Which dropped to P4 after Russell's disqualification. Okay, sorry. And then Lando Norris. Okay, there's some stuff to say about him. So he had P2 and P5. The P2 in Hungary, as I understand it, the team kind of agreed in advance. Whoever had the better start and kind of better first stint was going to win. And so the team felt, the strategy team felt free, I guess, to pit Piastri first, was it, right? So essentially allowing Lando to undercut, or maybe they pit Norris first. Anyways, they pitted Piastri to defend against Hamilton, which was unnecessary in the end. But yeah, that allowed Lando to undercut. So he was ahead of Piastri, fresher tires, pulling away like crazy. Piastri made some mistakes, fell back even further. He even fell back actually due to a mistake before the pit stop that was the undercut. But nonetheless, the team insisted because they had agreed. So even though Lando pulled a really big gap, he had to slow down and give it back to Piastri. I did not enjoy that moment at all. It's like not fair racing. It's like contrived racing. Nobody likes that. But yeah, so he had to give it. He had a P2. The P5, he did it to himself. He said he was embarrassed. He slipped up at the start. No other cars really involved. And then he was in dirty air. And apparently Belgium is no longer an easy track to pass. Dirty air is a big deal. And as soon as you have a DRS train, it's over. So despite getting very close to Verstappen, he couldn't pass and had to settle for fifth. Let's see, Charles, P4, P3, very nice, consistent. Actually, both Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll doing quite well there. Yuki in Belgium started at the back because of engine changes, so P9, P16 there for him. Ricardo, a little bit of points, but less than Yuki. He got P12 and P10. So, yeah. I'm kind of sad that people don't talk about Yuki as a potential driver to move up to the main Red Bull team because he continues to just do better than Daniel. It's probably they just don't trust his volatility emotionally. Although I think he's really done really well with that as well. Gasly also some terrible issues, retired due to a suspected hydraulic leak in Hungary. So a DNF and a P13. Might as well have stayed home. It feels sad to say. The Haas's as well, just not great. And Zhou also had a DNF, P19 DNF, like just really poor. Okay, as for the gaps, we already talked about that one. We have some closeness going on here, no position swaps, but I don't actually think Stroll is under threat from Hülkenberg. Although Hulky does well, he has not gained any points across these races, whereas Stroll has gained one sad point. But still, the trajectory of Aston Martin seems to be upwards right now, but the Haas seems to be downwards and really struggling. So I'm not worried about that. Also, this is a bit exciting. So we have 0 here between Tsunoda and Hulky. So I think Tsunoda, yeah, if Haas continues to struggle, Tsunoda can pass Hülkenberg, which is pretty cool because that'll bring him into P11 in the overall championship. Yeah, really good result. And let's see, we have another tie down here between Magnussen and Ocon, and yeah, Ocon can definitely pull that now that Haas is struggling. Again, no points for Magnussen, whereas Ocon got some points, won. But that's all it takes in the back pack to advance. And now I want to show you something different. We've been preparing this a long time. We is myself and my assistant, Natasha. So we have our first draft. It's not perfect, but check it out. Okay, here it is. We have an animation of the Drivers' Championship so far. So here we have everyone's car, just in alphabetical order. And here, of course, we have the points. We're getting up to about 277. So let's just go through the races. Bahrain, there we go. Isn't that cool? Saudi Arabia, Austria, Japan. So we're getting a clear Max, Ferraris and Perez, McLaren, especially Lando is starting to happen. And then Mercedes and Oscar and everyone else. Okay, China. Max just pulling ahead. Miami. Italy. So it's getting very clear now. After Italy, it's Max and then 2 Ferraris, Lando and Perez, and then kind of the rest with a few Mercedes starting to kind of peak out. 1 Aston Martin still doing okay. Piastri definitely doing okay. Okay, Monaco. So here comes Piastri. Canada. Now Mercedes is starting to pull out. Now this is George, by the way. Perez starting to fall back. Okay, Spain. Austria. Silverstone. So after Silverstone, yeah, Max is way out there, but Lando is now catching. Ferraris are nicely ahead of the rest there, but the Mercedes have pulled away very firmly from the back of the pack. They are now with Perez and with Oscar. And then we have Hungary. And we have Belgium. So yeah, here we stand. Max is, yeah, he's got a great lead. So I'm sure he's got the championship. It's the team championship that's in danger. The Ferraris really have been together and consistent, so hats off to them. This is where now Hamilton is ahead of George because of, ouch, what happened to George. And Lando's still well ahead of Oscar, although recently Oscar has been doing really well. Perez is back here with George. So yeah, I look forward to getting this to be better and better, and to develop it and to just see how the championship evolves over time. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so forgive me, it was a bit spotty. It was the first time with the animation, but we'll polish this up and it'll be great to have this going forward. And I'll also work on making it a bit shorter. I just get so excited talking about everything. We have the summer break now, 4 weeks until the next race. We'll see you then.